Hey guys, I'm Miss Haridas and this is the Study Hive. Today's lesson we are going to be looking at specialised cells. So if you followed some of the previous videos, the last lesson was actually on cells. So this really follows up quite nicely. So if you haven't watched that yet, definitely have a look. And we're going to recall the organisation from cells to organism, so the hierarchy, and describe how specialised cells are adapted to their function. So again, when I say function, I mean their job. So how are cells really good at what they need to do? Now, if you look at the pyramid of complexity, the very, very basic of things actually is an organelle. And these are little subcellular structures that are actually found within cells. So you've got your organelle, then you have your cells, and then if you get lots of cells and you put them together, you will have something called tissues. And that's not the tissues that you blow your nose with, that's actually tissues that are made up of cells. And then if you put lots of different tissues together, and those tissues can make up something called an organ. So an organ could be your heart or your lung, they're all examples of organs. And then you take all these organs and you put them together, which they carry out a particular function, and you have different organ systems. So organ systems might be the circulatory system, which is how blood travels around your body. Or it could be your nervous system, how electrical impulses are passed around your body in order for your body to communicate with each other. And then finally, all these systems are really put together and you get your organism. So that's like you and me. Right, so let's really look at the definitions of what this means so that we can really put the right scientific keywords when we have our exam in front of us. So we start off with the smallest, which is the organelles. Now these are your subcellular structures. So they're the little things that are found within each cell, and they are specialized to carry out particular, or even better, specific functions or jobs. If you just want a quick reminder about what different organelles you have in your cells, check out my last video on cells. Now, the cell itself is the basic structural and functional unit of a living organism. So your basic structural and functional unit of a living organism. Now, if I give you an example, if I take a cell and that cell is represented by a red piece of Lego. So one red piece of Lego represents one cell. Now, if I then put all these red Legos and make a little kind of plane of red Lego pieces, I would get my tissue. And that's because a tissue is a group of cells with similar structures, and they work together to perform a shared or specific function. So one whole plane of red Legos would make up my tissue. So after the tissues, we put different tissues together, and those tissues can make up an organ. So if I take that plane of red Lego pieces, which is one tissue, and then I take a whole plane of yellow Lego pieces, is another tissue, and then I take a third plane of blue Lego pieces that are put together, that's your third tissue, and I put these red, yellow and blue tissues or Lego pieces together, I will get my organ. And so an example of that would be my heart, because my heart is made up of different tissues and together it makes up an organ, which is my heart. So the key thing there, so your organ, is made up of a group of tissues that are working together to perform a specific function. So if I take my different organs, so I'll give you an example. If I take my heart, my blood vessels, which are made up of your arteries and your veins, and I put them together to carry out a particular function to allow blood to travel around my body, that makes your organ system. That makes, in this case, this example, that would be your circulatory system. And you've got loads of different organ systems in your body. You've got your nervous system, your reproductive system, your endocrine system, which is all to do with your hormones. If you don't know that, that's an interesting one to research. But loads of different organ systems that you have in your body. So then you have all your organ systems, and they all work together to give you an organism, which is you and me. So we're examples of organisms. So are plants. Plants are also examples of organisms. So that's your hierarchy there. And kind of the big question is, why do cells need to specialize? So really, to answer that question, we need to understand, what does it mean to specialize? Now, specialised means you want to change or adapt to carry out a specific function, to do a job better. So if I give you an example of you, when you're in school, you study all the same subjects and you wear a school uniform. And as you do your A-levels, you start to weed out the subjects that you don't like, and then once you choose those subjects, you go on to choose your degree, and then you go into jobs. Now, when you go into jobs, some of you might become, say, doctors, others might decide to become teachers, and some might be wanting to go into becoming a police officer. And all these jobs require you to wear certain outfits. So as a doctor, you might have a stethoscope, the police officer might have a gun and handcuffs, and the teacher might have books in their hands that they need because they're constantly reading to refine their knowledge. So the difference was, in school you wore the same clothes, but then you all kind of took your different paths and you went into jobs that allowed you to change your clothes to do your job better. Because a police officer wouldn't do a good job if you gave him or her a stethoscope, nor will a doctor be very good at handling a gun. So in the same analogy, this is an example of why cells need to specialize. So they all start off as the same generic cell, and then they adapt and they change their shapes because they all have different jobs or functions that they need to carry out. So it's really important for them to carry out those jobs well and efficiently, that they specialize or differentiate is another word, or change and adapt to be able to do that really well. So now that we know why cells become specialised, we really want to be able to highlight some examples and look at their adaptation. So if you look at the sperm cell, why is it really good at its job or good at its function? Well, in this area over here, which is the head of the sperm cell, it contains a lot of enzymes. Now, the enzymes are really important because when the sperm swims to the egg, it needs to break down that egg and really get the DNA from the sperm into the DNA found in the egg. So it uses the enzymes found in the acrosome, which is a specific term for the head of the sperm cell, to be able to break that down. It also has a tail, you can see here, and that tail is really key for it to swim to that egg. So a really fancy word, if you want to show off for the tail of the sperm, we can call it the flagellum. And again, the specialized cell, the sperm cell, has lots of mitochondria. Now, if you remember from the last video, mitochondria are really important for respiration because they release energy, and that energy is used for the sperm to be able to go and travel to the egg. So let's go on to the egg cell, which is found in females. And the egg cell, the main adaptation of the egg cell is that it has a lot of nutrients, and the nutrients are found just in the cytoplasm. If you remember that from the last video, it has a lot of nutrients found in the cytoplasm, and that's really important because that egg cell, when it fuses, when the DNA fuses with the sperm cell, it's going to grow into a baby. So it goes from an egg cell to a zygote to an embryo to a fetus, and that growth requires the nutrients of the egg cell to be able to grow. So that's really, really important. It also carries the maternal DNA found in the nucleus. So if you remember that word again, the nucleus, which contains the genetic information. Right, so that takes us to the ciliated epithelial cells. So does anyone know where you find these? So they're actually found lining the respiratory system. So if I give you an example, you find them lining the trachea, and the really key feature, just highlight over here, is that you've got lots of hair-like projections over here. And this is really important because it allows you to brush up any kind of mucus that traps bacteria or dust, pushes it all the way out, so it's really protecting your body all the way so that you can actually swallow it. So they contain lots of mitochondria, and the mitochondria is really important for respiration, so it releases energy, and that allows the cilia, which is the hair, to actually beat together to brush away these substances. So another example is a neuron. So this is how your cells really communicate with each other, and it makes up the nervous system. And the key features of a neuron is that it has a long axon. So the axon is just found here. And that long axon allows it to travel far distances in your body so that the electrical impulses can travel. It also has these dendrites, which is these substances, these kind of projections over here. So it allows it to branch out and connect to other neurons. Remember, the neuron is actually the cell and the nerve is actually technically the tissue. So the neurons make up the tissue, which is the nerve. And then another feature that it has, I'll write it for you, is this yellow kind of substance which is wrapped around the axon. So that's called the myelin sheath. And that actually makes the electrical impulse travel a lot faster. And again, you might see a pattern here. It just has a lot of mitochondria so that this process can happen efficiently to release energy for respiration. And that takes us to the muscle cells. So the muscle cells, I've drawn 4 muscle cells here, and it's really key in actually contracting and relaxing. So in order to contract and relax all the time, for example, it's part of your digestive system or your biceps and muscles, in order for that to happen, it needs lots of mitochondria. Why? Because that's where respiration happens and it releases energy so that it can contract and relax very quickly. So then this leads us on to some specialized cells in plants. So root hair cells are found in the roots of plants, and they really dig deep into the soil, and they've got a large surface area. So a large surface area meaning they've got lots of area for particles to be able to travel in and out of that cell. So again, you can see key features of a plant cell. It's got a cell wall, and it's got a vacuole, and it's also got chloroplast in there. But the adaptation that makes it good at its job is that it's got a large surface area, and again, lots of mitochondria. So you can see the mitochondria here, so that it can take up nutrients like nitrates as an example, and it uses active transport, which is in one of my other videos that you can look at to learn about active transport. It uses this process to take in the nitrates. So those are all the examples of some really key specialized cells. And now really to put this into practice is I've got an exam question for you to have a go at. So I'd suggest pausing this video. It's worth 4 marks, so I would give you 4 minutes and see if you can answer this question. So the question reads, cells can be specialized for a particular job. Now the diagram shows the structure of a human sperm cell, and it's labelled here mitochondria and the long tail. Now it says describe as your command word, so really saying what you see. Describe how the long tail and the mitochondria help the sperm to do its job. So what's a better word for job that we learnt today? Yep, that's right, it is function. I want you to actually see the mark scheme because I think this is really helpful to understand. If you look at the 4 marks, you know that 2 marks is going to be given for the first part, which is the long tail answer, and 2 marks is going to be given for your mitochondria. So you really want to split that up to give 2 different points for both features. So the long tail, the key thing is what does it do? It allows the sperm to swim. That gives you 1 mark. And where is it heading to? It's heading towards the egg, and that's going to give you your 2nd mark. So 2 different marks, 2 different points. And so if you look at the last part, so the mitochondria, so remember there's 2 key statements you want to get for 2 marks. So the mitochondria, if you have a look at the mark scheme, it releases energy for movement. An example is movement. So it releases energy for movement. And the 2nd mark is why does it need to do this, or how does it do this? It does this using the process of respiration. So respiration happens in the mitochondria and it releases energy. So 1 mark for releases energy for movement, and the 2nd mark for in respiration. And that gives you the full 4 marks. So I hope you got the 4 marks, and I hope you feel confident with that topic, and I will see you soon. Hey guys, I hope you really enjoyed this lesson on specialized cells. If you haven't checked out already, go watch my previous lesson on cells, and if you like them, please like and subscribe to support us for more videos. Thank you. Bye.